Hello everyone and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today we are going to be talking about fail stacking, and this has been in the game since day one when all of us started the game. A lot has changed over the past 9 years. It's a lot easier now, and so I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to talk about the few methods of doing it, and then I'll show you some examples and talk about like optimal numbers for various things. So with that said, what is fail stacking? Basically, when you're trying to upgrade your gear, you have a set percentage. Let me just show you this one. And I'll use this as an example. So when you are trying to upgrade, let's say you have a 2 stack right now, or whatever it is. The lower your stack means the lower the chance of success you have. And then if you were to put it like an 80 stack, you have a higher percent. So how do you build that number is by failing, and that's why they call it fail stacks. So bigger number means higher chance to succeed. Now, ultimately, that sounds really easy to figure out, right? But when you start getting into the mid and end game, you're like, okay, so what are the optimal stacks, or what is the cheapest way to build it for my other gears, and what should I do? That's what we're going to be talking about. So with that said, I have a couple of different methods on how to go about fail stacking and what you should do. So, number one, the method we're going to be talking about is the cheapest method of making fail stacks. Now, keep in mind, when I say fail stacking, that number is like 1 through 300 or whatever you're trying to make. The cheapest way would be through Reblath. And what do I mean by that one? So let's say you are, let's say you wanted to make a 100 stack, right? And you don't have the advice of Alex, or you don't want to buy it. The best way to do that would be failing on items that are the cheapest to build that stack. And the cheapest way would be Reblath. So the reason why is on certain items, when you enhance, you're going to be using like memory fragments. Those have a value. Heart, or like sharps, and then Blackstones, those also have a value. So the one thing that Reblath offers is unlimited repairs for cheaper than memfrags. I believe, at least here on the NA server, let me look at it. Memfrags are enhancement. Yeah, they're like 3 mil each. That's kind of crazy, right? It used to be 5 like a week ago. But anyway, what you could do is you go to the shop, and you see all these Reblath. These are what you use to repair. And like, you see the price difference. You could just buy an unlimited quantity of them just through the vendor. So this is what we used back in the day. And, even still now, people do it. So it's the cheapest way to do it. And I'll show you some examples at the end. But the next thing I want to talk about is the profit return. So, there's always a risk when you enhance Reblath. Like, let's say you get something, you're clicking a tet to pen, and it goes like what I did back in the day, and you just minus 250 stack. Yeah, that was on video, by the way. You can watch that. But anyway, the one that most people do will be enhancing boss gear, black stars, and items that you could sell back to the market in the off chance it does go. And the best thing to be enhancing right now in current day would be Black Star offhands. Sovereign offhands are coming out next week, but historically, offhands and awakening weapons have generally been the best things that are, not too expensive to start and something that everyone will need. But I've seen people enhance on like Fallen God armors for profit. That's a little bit like higher entry level, but higher returns. And like right now, selling black stars, kind of goes up, then people figure it out, and then it goes down again, and then it goes to the bottom, then people are like, I can make more profit, and then it goes up again, and then people figure it out again, and it goes down. So historically, black stars have always been the best things to do across the board, but right now it's either awakening or offhand. So the reason why we do that is, let's say you're going for like Tet or Pen, building up that +5, +6 fail stack. If it goes, you sell it back and you're like, oh, okay, so I made an extra like 10 bill after taxes or something like that. Or if it goes on pen accidentally, suddenly you just have like another 75 billion. That's pretty cool, right? That's like 40 hours of grinding or something. So yeah, profit return is a second one. Sometimes you make profit, sometimes you don't, but like at the end of the day, you have an item that has value, whereas Reblath, no value, but you could, you know, it's cheaper. You don't have to pay for memory frags and everything. And so this third option is the fastest one, the one that, you know, most people are probably going to do because they're lazy or don't know how to do fail stacking. It's really just buying these Origin of Dark Hungers or the Faint ones. The difference between these are Origins are like, you know, full value, whereas the Faint ones are basically the Origins, but half value. So at the end of the day, they're kind of like the same thing. But, you know, I would probably, depending on your fail stack, if you're at like the very high end, like 298 and stuff, it's better to use these. But ultimately, for most people, building up to like a 295, 296 stack, you would be using the Origins. These are, you know, as of right now, 1 bill each. I assume these are probably going to get sold out next week just because people are going to be enhancing Sovereign and all that stuff. But ultimately, long term, like if you're watching this 6 months later down the line, chances are these are still on the market. Same with these Faints, and then Essence of Devouring, 4 of these equals 1 Origin, so that's how you make it. Yeah, so you see the tooltip right there? It tells you if you use this item on your fail stack at what number that says, it goes up by plus that many. So making a 100 to around like a 290 up to 296 is, I believe it, I did a calculation at 1 billion each. It's about 22 billion. So take that for what you will. I think you can generally make a 300 stack for under 22 or by doing this, assuming, you know, there's a little bit of RNG involved in this one, but buying the thing straight out, there's no RNG. That's why I recommend it to most people. And yeah, those are basically the ways to get fail stacks. And so what I wanted to do was show you guys some examples. I've been playing this game for a long time. I have a lot of fail stacks through events. I've also made a lot just by playing the game, trying to enhance it. You guys can watch my journey to pen Blackstar, or even my year-old, like multi-year-old videos on enhancing. And I basically explain how to do it step by step, enhancing Blackstars and everything. I even have a series of it. I'll leave it in the description. It's the Journey to Pen Blackstar. But let's talk about this. Okay, so let's try to make some fail stacks with Reblath. I don't particularly want to use these concentrateds because they're kind of a lot, but for a demonstration, let's take out some of these, and I'll show you how you can get started with Reblath if you're interested in the cheapest method. Okay, so nowadays, what I would recommend to you guys is if you have a lot of Blackstones, back in the day, we used to have to click these from 0. What I would recommend to you guys is clicking this button right here, and then starting at probably maybe like a 30-ish. That's probably the highest I would go. Up to 45, that the amount of Blackstones you use to get that 45 stack is not particularly worth it. You're going to have to check the prices on Blackstones for that as well. Another method would be to crystallize the spares, and that also translates into fail stacks. Along with green gear, some of you guys may not know this because this is like an old thing that, you know, it's kind of outdated. So you see all these green gears right here? You could use that and then basically fail stack on that. And also, like, let's say you buy a +8 or something for a certain one. You could heat them down and you talk to this NPC right here, extraction, and extract Blackstones. And you can get more Blackstones for all that too. So yeah, that's one thing. There's also the add-on person that's like right here. Behind him, there's an NPC that sells green gear that you can fail stack on as well. But anyway, so with that said, let's do some enhancing. So let's say you want to, you know, I don't know, you want to make a... These numbers are kind of outdated because making a 30 stack is kind of free these days. But, you know, enhancing black stars and everything is a little bit more costly. So let's see. I don't think I have anything. Let me see. Hold on. Let me just pull out a piece of random gear. Maybe we'll enhance some accessories too. What do I have? Lavertos. Some of you guys may not even know what that is because that is kind of, you know, old and outdated. So what you're going to want to do, let me show you an example. So for example, 0 plus 7 is free, 100%. And then when you see these things, the adventurer's choice, it means that's the number that most people click their enhance on. So whether it goes or not, like, that's what it is. I would, you know, take a lot of this with a grain of salt. I do think it's pretty accurate in terms of, like, maybe you should try it on like a 0 to 4 stack, but you probably shouldn't click it on a 30. There's a lower rate for a reason. So what I would do if you've never enhanced before is probably take the ones that has the higher percentages, and then I would mostly do that. But when it gets to a higher, and these are all even numbers, like let's say you're enhancing a high-end piece of gear and all of these are like 2% from ranging whatevers, that's when you know, think about that a little bit more. Okay, so let's see. So this is 73%, right? Now let's say you wanted to build like a 5 stack or something. What you would do is basically click this one. Oh, cool. But right, so we have a 10 stack. Now that percent is higher. That is fail stacking in a nutshell. It obviously gets more complicated than that based on what you're trying to enhance. But like after you see this one, oh my god, that's embarrassing for a video. But anyway, then you see things like this where it's like 0 to 4, 60% versus, oh, this one up. So you should be using a higher fail stack. So here's the thing you guys are going to see, and I would recommend not doing, but also I would recommend just looking at it as a chance for averages. So this number says it would, to force it like a guarantee, is 3 Blackstones and 20 durability. What we really look for is the durability because memfrag cost is kind of expensive. We're talking about like higher end gear at this point, right? So like instead of reblast fail stacking, you're using memfrags and you're also potentially using more expensive stones than Blackstones that we have, right? And so what you want to do is say, can you get this in under 2 clicks? So each click is 10 durability. And so like if you can do that, what would the percentage you have to use be to do it on average in under 2 clicks? So obviously that would be 50. So what you're gonna want to do to like save time, obviously you could just click on reblast just like I showed you how. But if you have these extra fail stacks and everything, you could use like a 10 stack, for example, and then be like, okay, so these are kind of high, and like to get a 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 on average, you would be using like a 15 stack or something. With that said, you have to keep in mind the value of the item because sometimes it might just straight up be cheaper to force it. Usually that's not the case, but you know, sometimes it might be worth the headache or not getting the headache of doing. So yeah, in this case, like 50% would be roughly probably like a 15 or so stack. And I would actually agree with this chart over here between using a 0 to like a 10 stack, because using a 21, it does cost silver to make as well, right? Like you have to use these Blackstones. And so like you have to factor in all these costs as well. So that's one of the reasons why. And so in my case, I'm just gonna do it and hope for like a 1 in 2 average or 1 in 3 average. So yeah, with that said, that's cool, right? Now, obviously things get a little bit more complicated than that as you upgrade higher end gear, for example. Let me just pull a piece of gear. Let's use a piece of boss gear. Okay, so now you're seeing things like crazier numbers, and you also see something called cronstones. when you start seeing cronstones, you're gonna realize you should probably start like saving these cronstones, because later in the game, especially at end game and even mid-tier game, wherever your gear is at, you're gonna need these. So it's important to just not use these randomly. And one mistake that I see a lot of people doing, especially if you're a newer player and you're clicking like Tuvala gear or seasonals and they give you the option to use cronstones, never do that. Trust me when I say I understand that people get tilted. Let's say you failed like a piece of pen gear 15 times in a row and you're like, why me? And then you're like, maybe I could use a cronstone to not have to deal with it. Don't do that. Just trust me on that. Most things are not worth using cronstones on until you get to the mid to end game, and the items that you're trying to click are way more expensive than the value of the cronstones. So like once you get to like past Blackstar, like Sovereign, Karazad, Fallen God armors, that's when you start using cronstones. But everything below that is generally you want to build Failstacks, and then if you get a big enough Failstack, you save it for those items that you need. So anyway, like things that get more expensive as we go on, as your stack gets higher, the percentage gets higher, and cronstones, you're going to need them later. So you know all those free things that they give you through events. If you're a new player and you're like redeeming all the codes that they give you, and you're like, oh, I have like 40,000 cronstones, I should use it. No, just hold on to it, put it in your bank, put it in your storage, and then wait for it till you get to an end game. Trust me, you'll thank me later. And if you've already done it and made that mistake, it's fine. Just start saving up again, because you're going to need it later. So yeah, as we get into more complicated gear and more expensive upgrades in the future, you upgrade from like, you know, your normal Blackstone to like concentrated and other pieces of gear. Like this game is not really beginner friendly, because you look at all these things and you're just like, what is this? So there's like normal concentrateds, there's flawless ones for black stars, these thingies for, you know, upgrading Sovereign, and then there's a chaotic one for upgrading Fallen God, and then these for Karazad. They have like different materials for different pieces of gear. And for people like me who have been playing as they release, I can understand this a lot better. But if you're a new player and you're like, what is all this? What do they do? Where do I get it? Trust me, I understand it's confusing. I understand also why they don't have a unified, you know, material, because if everyone's using it, then it's just like it's harder to get and it would be sold out on the market. So that's why they can't do a unified like material, because it would be permanently sold out. So it's like one of those things where it's very hard to balance. Like, I'm pretty sure the developers know this is confusing, but what can they do about it without destroying the market? And yeah, so another thing is learning all this. Like, if you look at the tooltip as a new player, you're like, what does this mean? Yeah, you use this material to turn it into this one, or this one, or this one, and you use a lot of other material. Yeah, it's confusing. Trust me, I understand. And this one, so yeah, it's one of those things you just learn playing the game. So one of the things that I'd recommend for all of you guys is basically just looking at this tab, have it bookmarked, like add to favorite, like the enhancing or whatever. And then just kind of look at the prices. So fail stacking can be confusing, especially since this is an event-driven economy. So like right now we have a lot of grinding and life skilling buffs going on and drop rates. That means people are grinding, mem frags are going down in price because people are running scrolls and everything, getting more from grinding. And then because people are doing that, they're enhancing life skilling. So that means people are getting more sharps, and then that's kind of falling, but also going up. So it's a lot to do. Here's what I'd recommend, TLDR for all of you. Buy an Origin of Dark Hunger. Look at this tooltip right here. What fail stack do you have? Put in that number and be like, okay, so I have a 130 stack. How much would this give me? It would give me plus 18. That's how it works. and that's how you fail stack. And then with that said, just start learning, you know, what does what. But as you play the game longer, this will make more sense. And yeah, all these fail stacks, a lot of them nowadays are just kind of given out through events and just playing the game, doing your world bosses, and then, you know, here's what I'd recommend you guys to do. So you see all these world bosses around the map, put your characters that you played through on season, like for example, all of these are at different bosses. This one is at Coranda, this one's, you know, everywhere else. So yeah, put boss salts at places. Occasionally, if you do them, they give you fail stacks and other, you know, obviously rewards for it. But that's one way to do it. Other than that, this is something that, you know, if you want to fail stack with Reblath, that is the cheapest way. I would recommend failing for Black Stars if you want a profit. But if you just want the stack, Origin of Dark Hungers, not necessarily the cheapest, but there's 0 RNG and you just get the stack. So with enough silver, you can kind of brute force it with that. So yeah, with that said, let's talk. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about some accessories. So this is obviously different based on the accessory, but you know, it's a little bit different based on like the value of it. So let's look at, here's one that I think is still relevant that is not Charizard. So distortion earrings. As we all know, now that we have a guaranteed pity system, which is we all know is the Agris essence, we kind of do the math around the pity system. And we also know from data mines and also, you know, years of testing, each bracket has, you know, a soft cap. So like, for example, hitting from a Pride to Duo using a 40 stack is probably the highest before it hits the soft cap, and after any numbers after 40 is diminishing returns. So Duo to Try, 44 is that soft cap, and then you get diminishing returns after that. Obviously, the fail stack you use depends on how much the item costs for succeeding and, you know, averages, you know. So Try to Tet is like a 110 stack, and then after that is, you know, whatever. Tet to Pen is a different story. You really, like, if you are at the point we're going for Tet or Pen accessories, that's not Charizard, Sovereign, all those like big things, look at this number and be like, okay, so Agris Essence is 20 to pity. So on average, like if you, let me think. I think a Tet to Pen, or no, Try to Tet is 30%. And so you use like a 110, that's like a, you know, 1 in 3-ish, more or less. But obviously math doesn't work like that, and RNG is different. So everyone who fail stacks, we base our stacks around, you know, averages, and not worst comes to worst, or, you know, if you one tap it. So yeah, and then Pen is the ultimate goal for basically everything, and then endgame is a different story. But yeah, so you see how this is like 65 billion, and then like a Tet is 10 billion. That's the reason, because using a stack that gives like a 250 stack, I believe, is like 15%. So like that's a 1 in 6, 1 in 7-ish to succeed. That is average, and then the market reflects that price, and that's cool. But then once you get into, you know, later on, and you're looking at purple Charizard and Sovereign stuff and Fallen God, yeah, a lot of those numbers go kind of out the window because these are not sellable, and we really just have to go off of like, this requires 30 essences. How much is each click? What fail stack do I have? And so if I were to go over every single item, this video would be like a couple hours. So before I wrap up, I just want to say, hopefully that like made a few things easier. But if you have a piece of gear and you don't know what fail stack to use it on, or you're just kind of curious, you need gear help, you could drop in the comments or join the Discord. We have a channel where you could just post a screenshot of your gear and I'll point you in the right direction. And I could also help you like talk about endgame gear, because trust me, I had to do this too. Like these decks aren't free, so like you just kind of have to do it. And same with all of this, I made every single piece of gear that I have, so I think I can give you at least a fail stack that I use and what I would recommend if you need help. So happy to point you guys all in the right direction. But fail stacking, it's not as easy. It's easy to learn, but hard to be like, there's a lot of math involved. So anyway, that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop in the comments, and I will see you guys later. Peace.